If everybody's ready, we'll get started. Um, Item 1, public participation session. Just to underline anything, if I don't know what Erin might have said before I got here. This is your only chance to talk about the application. And when the members are debating the item later, you won't be able to intervene or ask any further questions. So just need to focus your attention on the public session. So it's over to members of the public. Who wants to start? If you just say who you are for the benefit. It's entirely up to you. It's just a matter of whether it works. You can use the microphone there if you like.
Sure, I'll introduce myself. My name is Ian Campbell. I don't live in Oswestry Town. I'm from Oswestry Rural. There's already been an application come through, and Oswestry Town were neutral over a planning application for an HMO. We now have another one here. I feel that, as you've said about being recorded and for things to be transparent, I think there needs to be more transparency about what these applications are actually for. I mean, has anyone identified a local need for HMOs for people to live in? And if it's not for local people, who is the HMO for? If it's for people coming in from another area, and whether they're linked to asylum or anything of that nature, I think putting people into multiple occupancy situations doesn't allow integration if it's integration they're looking for. I don't know whether they're here because they're applying or they are simply illegal immigrants. And I feel that this kind of planning application without comment is going to have a detrimental effect, obviously, on security and safety, because we might not know who these people are. We have a situation where it's hard enough to find a policeman, okay? And when they are around, are they going to be in sufficient numbers to deal with any incidents? Because a lot of people, if these HMOs aren't for local people, then we have to assume that there may be misunderstandings that might happen. So we need to know about police support. We need to know about dentists. I have local people that I know that can't get dental appointments. I want to know how everything is going to impact on stretched resources. But, you know, I have to fight to get to see my doctor. I've had one application of my appointments from Shropshire Hospital in Shrewsbury. I've had an appointment 10 times. I've had it cancelled 10 times. Now, if I'm experiencing that type of thing, I'd like to know if there is going to be an uptick in the amount of people coming to the area, then what services are going to be put in place, and it would be beneficial to see the services in place before all of a sudden there's an increase in people. And I'm very concerned that there isn't transparency. We aren't being given numbers. We're not told what's going on. And I would press this council in this application to ask these simple questions that I think any ordinary person that wanted to make a plan about how to manage situations should ask. And I simply would ask you to do that and ask whether it's suitable to have that many people in buildings that some of them are listed, some of them might not take well to adjustment, and you have to ask about the facilities that will be there and what expense there is going to be for the local environment to manage it. I think that's I could talk for a long time, but I might find I'm starting to repeat myself. But I think it's really important for everyone here to look at this application as something that could cause people to feel insecure because of the volume and the nature of the accommodation that's being discuss. And is it suitable, A, for a local to go and live in, if it is for local people, or is it safe and secure for those that might be placed in this environment from the purposes of their own health and safety? So that's pretty much it from me. So thank you very much for listening to me. And if there's anyone else that wishes to speak, please go ahead. Thank you.
My name is Martin Jones. I'm objecting to this application. Several reasons. If we touch on the basics, such as parking, you've got a building where its placement is on one side of the road. Access and egress for parking, there isn't, unless you use the town car parks. The size and amenities available within the alterations don't seem particularly suitable to a HMO in the terms of, if those of you that have been to university and have moved out of halls into private accommodation would understand what a HMO is. It allows you to have your own space, communal areas that are normally for 6 to 7, not 22 people. It smacks of someone who's seen the Serco advert that says, we'll pay you for 5 years, all bills met, all of your costs met, we'll pay above the rate, and it will be given back to you in the same state that we took it. The previous application, which you were neutral about, but you did highlight some areas, and the one from Oswald Street bid highlights particularly the impact. 22 people there, they may be on social security, not in work, or in disability and not in work, and then where are they going to go? There's enough people that sit in the town centre and not cause a nuisance, but make people uncomfortable. Are we having more of that? Are these people is this meeting a local need? And Serco, believe it or not, are having quite a big impact, not in Oswald Street, but locally, in terms of relocating people, because 5 years guarantee above is a big, big price. It means that someone hasn't got to worry, because they will get incremental increases. At Nestcliff, you will see people moving out of the camp. Because they've got nothing to do, they congregate in the village square. That's not a square, it's by the old war memorial, and wander around. That just manifests. We had an issue with Gledrid, with the hotel there. Again, we're all assuming that this is going to foreign nationals. That may not be the case, and we shouldn't look at it from that perspective. But the location and the amenities available, not to mention the further pressures on services locally, with 600 houses going up down the road and no provision for dentists, doctors or anything else, or schools. Naturally, they shouldn't be needing schools if they're in a HMO. However, that's not guaranteed. There may not be single occupancy, and they may require specialists. So, is it suitable for any families, or is it solely for single males? Who knows? But thank you very much. As I say, I object, and I object on behalf of some other people as well. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I tried to keep it short to give other people people. You've turned up, speak up.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak, but I will. I just hope that the people sitting around this table will approach this issue based on planning matters alone and not be swayed by the thinly veiled racism and other forms of prejudice that the 3 letters HMO tends to bring out in people, especially on social media. Thank you.
But I spoke to the last planning meeting about HMOs, and I've thought for some time the council needs to develop a policy on HMOs and how to deal with them. You could do worse than starting at the Dentist Who Invest podcast, because in the end of 2024, the promoter of this particular project spoke on it. He's talking particularly about HMOs. HMOs fulfill a need for accommodation by young people and single people and people who are on contracts in a particular area. So he described when he was talking about who are they for, it's made for investors. Our resident association, we have a resident association in the centre of town, has been following the development of HMOs for a number of years now. On that podcast, he gave a good description of why it's happening. Returns, it's partly demand, because there's a shortage of accommodation for single people and people who come, say, to do 3 months' work. It's also driven by investment, by where the return lies in renting out housing. And he explained in that how buy-to-let is now not as profitable. A lot of people are leaving buy-to-let. With an HMO, you get a bigger income. Buy-to-let is also being hampered by increasing interest rates, by the looming bill which will go through Parliament soon to protect renters, and by an increase in stamp duty when you buy accommodation. A room in Oswestry per month is somewhere between £450 and £650, and it's about £550, I would say, on average. So with a big HMO, you make a lot of money. Investors tend to have a lot of buildings on the go at once, so they're financed by debt. So an HMO provides a good cash flow to service your debt. He did describe in the podcast the sort of people you tend to get in HMOs, and in the HMOs that have been in our area, this more or less coincides with them, but not entirely. But he described young people, blue-collar workers, nurses, maybe doctors here working the orthopaedic on a short-term contract, and people who are here to do contract work for 3 months, perhaps go home at weekends and move on. And he said most people who live there, it's short-term. But the problem with HMOs is you never know how well they're going to be managed. You never know how they're going to turn out. So it's a difficult decision to make.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wants to throw any?
Again, I wasn't going to speak, but the application is obviously for a HMO. My views on it is not regarding the fact that it will become an HMO. It's already got planning permission for apartments, the Smithfield. My view is more sort of the fact that, and it's not necessarily a planning policy or anything that could be objected on planning, is the fact that if and when Oswestry regenerates, there's only one hotel in the town centre. I have friends, relatives that come to stay in Oswestry, and there is actually nowhere to stay, where another hotel in the town centre, because we've only got 2 others outside the town centre, would add more to the town economy, and that should be something that should be considered. Now, I know the building's been empty for probably over 10 years now, and the current owners or previous owners have let it go to rack and ruin. But a building like this, once it's lost to residential, is lost. So where, imagine sort of like people are wanting to come and stay, and what would add benefit to Oswestry is another hotel, and they would add more to the economy with bringing in out money from outside the town, where the current application may not add as much to the economy. But that's just sort of my view and something to think about, that in the future there will be no places for residents, visitors to the town to come and visit relatives and add to the economy. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. If there's nobody else, if we move on to the agenda, item 2, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from absence for Councillors Roberts, personal, Councillors Borroman, business, Councillor Goodlad, business, Councillor Brindley, personal, Councillor Radford, personal, and Councillor Anderton.
Thank you. Disclosure of councillors' interest in any matters relating to the Code of Conduct. I'll start because I'm the Shropshire County Councillor for, and I've in the Cabinet with a planning portfolio. But for the benefit of the members of the public, that's for strategic planning, setting policy and the management of the service, not getting stuck into the day-to-day decisions. That's down to the planning chairman and things, just to avoid any confusion. James.
Just to disclose as the housing portfolio, but I'm here as the town councillor and will make my decision and speak as such.
Mark.
Yeah, I'd just like to disclose, as before, that I am the Vice Chair of the Shropshire Northern Planning Group. Any decisions made at that meeting, when it comes up at that meeting, will be based on the information and evidence that is presented there, and not at the Town Council meeting itself. So I am here as a Town Councillor today, and I have to keep an open mind when the main committee meeting at Shropshire becomes available at the time.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Is everybody happy they're a true and accurate record? Okay, it's moved, seconded. Everybody in favour of that? Thank you. Any abstentions? Okay. And yeah, I'll sign them, yeah, don't worry. And then if we go on to item 4, plan applications, and there's only the one for determination that we all know about. So does anybody want to address that? James.
Thank you, Chair. And I think it's important to preface my statement by once again stating how there are many residents seeking housing in Oswestry and Shropshire, especially for smaller 1- and 2-bedroom households. However, it doesn't mean that developer and property owners should see this as an invitation to cram as many bedrooms into our buildings as legally possible and label it as an HMO. We've heard from various members of the public tonight, and while their passionate views have been listened to and heard, this committee may only make its decision based purely on material planning considerations relating to the application, rather than its popularity for or against. With this in mind, I would, as I did previously, propose that the Council issues an objection to this planning application, commenting on the following considerations. While this time there is a designated waste area, given the number of households being proposed, there is no way that that would be sufficient for the number of bins that you do need for 22 households. Again, with 7 car parking spaces, it's more than the previous HMO. However, there's no details on how this would be distributed or enforced for the 22 residents. And then, again, using the central car park, it's not a long stay car park, nor is a residence parking scheme to allow for affordable parking to accommodate these residents. So, again, using just the fact that there is a large car park nearby doesn't satisfy the need for parking in this accommodation. And then, as a member of the public rightly mentioned, the fact that there's no outdoor recreation land defined, and given the number of residents being proposed, it's completely unsuitable given its location within a built-up commercial area of the town centre, not to have anywhere for these residents to have as part of their residential development.
I'm Duncan Kerr. I'm the local Shropshire councillor for the area. I think a couple of things to mention. The actual people who use the property we can't know and we can't take into account. If it gets permission, anybody can use it. We can't set criteria for any particular group. Indeed, they could have come to us and said, we want permission for this group. If they get permission, they get permission for any group. So whatever your views on who may or may not use it, whether they're local, whether they're whoever they are, I'm afraid in planning law, and that's all we can deal with here, is planning law, that's not a relevant criteria. However, we are faced with what is a very, very large HMO, and probably it's one of the largest in the county. And I think that is out of keeping with this area of the town. And it's a specific policy, it's policy CS6 on the council's planning strategy, which enables us to take into account density, and I think we need to strongly object on the grounds of excessive numbers of people being accommodated. I have nothing against multiple occupation. I lived in multiple occupation. I'm one, you know, if you want to know who lives there, it was me. And I wasn't a student, I was working. You know, that's the reality of my life at that time. And did I have a, it was absolutely fine. You know, there was a small, there was only about 4 or 5, I think, people, but we shared facilities, as you would in a multiple occupied properties. So whether we wish the world to be different or not, the reality of life at the moment is we've got 7,000 people across Shropshire on the waiting list, and James there is a portfolio holder for housing, so he'll probably be able to tell you how many there are in Oswestry. We have people who can only afford £500 a month for their accommodation. That's got a lot of money, and that will only get you a room. It won't get you a flat unless you can secure social housing, and you're not going to get that as a single person. So whether we wish the world is different, I certainly wish the world is different. We have to recognise that multiple occupation does fulfil a need for accommodation. And if you read on social media, you'll see some people have been very positive about their experience of multiple occupation. It does depend on who operates it, but the council, Shropshire Council, is responsible for enforcement and licensing of the properties. So if there's disrepair, if there's failure to meet basic minimum standards, that's not a planning matter, it's a matter for environmental health. It's another job I used to do. I used to be an environmental health officer that dealt with multiple occupied properties, and there's a team there that will inspect and they will enforce. And we may have to remind them of their responsibilities, as we have to do as a town council from time to time, but it's not as though once it's got permission, there's nothing that can be done about it. There's a team that can deal with disrepair, can deal with all the issues, even neighbourhood noise and nuisance are there. So I repeat, I'm happy to second the proposal that we object, I think, very much around the intensity of the occupation in this instance.
Anybody else? Mark?
Thank you, Chair. This property has a history of being used as a form of multiple occupation. Okay, it was a hotel previously. The previous plan application was one that I would have loved to have seen go through, and that was for the 7-6 flats. It did go through, but it wasn't implemented. So it got planning permission, but nobody then took that planning permission and produced those flats, which would have been, in my opinion, a much better use of the building. The next thing I would consider personally is what's going to happen to that building. It's been virtually derelict for 10 years. If it's going to be left for another 10 years, are we going to see a dangerous situation with it going to rack and ruin? As a previous councillor just said, I too have lived in a bed sitter, as it was called at the time, as a student and as a partner to my current wife, separately obviously in time, but they fulfilled a need in Mid Wales where I actually was, and there's nothing wrong with that. You cannot dictate what a bed sit, I'll call it that because I'm used to it, sorry, what a bed sit can be used for. The landlord rents it out as a business. So you cannot dictate who will go into that bed sit. In this area, to say that there isn't a need, I think is folly. There is a need for younger and older people, and I know personally of several people who are desperately trying to get into an accommodation, and they can't. So there are pros to this kind of HMO, but as has been said, 22 in that building seems excessive. Yes, there's going to be parking problems. I've looked at the plans, and the second floor hasn't got any kitchen facilities, for crying out loud, which means that they're going to have to go downstairs to actually live if they are living there. So I, too, have reservations about this particular application. If it had been 6 luxury flats, I would have jumped up and down and waved my arms in the air. Yeah, as long as they were implemented. But we're faced with this at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else want to chip in anything? I will say, while I've got my mic on, it's always a thing with planning. That you can't control the people, you can control the building. It's no different to when I buy a house, or the house next door gets sold. I can't choose my neighbours. So you can't apply one rule for one set of people and a different rule for other set of people. So it's difficult. We are acutely aware of the growth in this. It's come up at council meetings since I've been on. And we've started the process of working towards getting a neighbourhood plan, which will give the town council a bit more control over the shape of development in the town. And with my county hat on, until we've got the local plan sorted, one of the things we are bringing forward is a series of supplementary planning documents, and there's definitely an opportunity when we're talking about affordable housing and other housing related issues to get a specific SPD to do with HMOs and other things, so we can tighten up some of the guidance around all of that stuff. That was all I was going to... in terms of the kitchens, when I look at the drawings, when you look at the standards for HMOs, the kitchens they specify a floor area per the number of people and a maximum of 5 for the kitchen, but the ground floor kitchen is large, so other people are going to use it from other floors, and I'm just not convinced there's enough kitchen space for the number of rooms they're talking about, and as James said about the bins and the storage of things around that, so there's certainly enough question marks there. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. I think, taking into consideration what everyone's said, irrespective of who will be going into them, irrespective of who they are, what their status is, I think such lack of facilities for a high number of people, I mean 22, I mean that's inhumane, that can't be allowed to go through. There might have been an application that went through previously, but if you take into consideration the fact that the previous communal facilities such as car parking have now been built upon, we just can't allow this to go through.
Go on, Richard.
I'd just like to echo what everyone else is saying. When I looked at it, there's no communal space on the top floor, there's no cooking facilities on the top floor. If you want to cook, there's limited space on the second floor, and I couldn't see any communal space on the second floor unless I've missed it. It feels like the maximum number of bedrooms that potentially are legally allowed, but not with a consideration for exactly how it's going to work for people. So it does feel to me like there's an excessive number of requirements in there. I'd also just like to state we clearly do need to be looking for supporting people who need this kind of housing, but this for me feels like it's just too much.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Elmet just kind of made the point at the end of his statement there. I think that it is very important that we do look for support in applications to bring more affordable housing to Oswestry. It is something that, you know, as a youth worker, something that's been an issue for a very long time. But I think for this, the word that it's a phrase I can't get out of my head when I'm thinking about this. This is battery farming. This is battery farming children, battery farming humans. It's just it's cramming as many people as possible into the shortest, you know, smallest space to make as much money as possible, and that's we want to encourage people to not just live here but stay here and thrive here. And they're not going to be able to do that in, and 22 people is, that's a best case scenario. Most of these people are going to end up with partners. They're going to have, there's going to be other people using that. There's going to be more waste coming out of that building than just 22 people. The lack of parking, all the things that have been highlighted, it's, it's a clear no. But I think as far as encouraging people to bring forward more measured HMO offers in the future would be fantastic, because there really is a need, but this isn't it.
Anybody else? Go on, Claire.
Yeah, just to mirror what everyone else has said, it seems like they've just scraped by the bare minimum, and I don't feel like anyone, regardless of who is going to occupy it or would occupy it, I don't feel like anyone should be living in those kind of conditions. We need to be providing more. And yeah, like Mark had said, a member of the public, it's just not, it's not suitable for anyone.
Anybody else? Go on, Ruth.
I just want to repeat what Councillor Moore said. He says battery farming. I'm thinking of all these like puppy farms and that, cramming all these little animals into inhumane conditions. It can't be allowed.
And I know that we're, it's meant to be just on the planning, but reflecting what other people have said. My concern is when you've got, as you say, 20 is the minimum. We could well have 40 people in there, and then you start having vulnerabilities. And I think, especially with only one communal area, one kitchen, you're putting people in real danger. It's just not safe. It's not something that's tenable.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to express the concern to the council, as well as what the decision is and what the recommendation is, because you always get a fine line, and sometimes the consideration stuff will shove it over one way or the other. But I'd certainly make sure that's fed back. Does anybody else want to say anything? It's been moved. You're happy to take what Duncan said? And it's been seconded by Duncan. Is everybody who's in favour of that, please show? None against, no abstentions. Thank you. You've got the list of planning decisions for noting. I'm happy to move we note those. Somebody, Jonathan. Everybody in favour of that? Thank you. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.